All right, if I could have everyone's attention, we'll go ahead and get our meeting called to order. It's good to see everyone this afternoon, and we have several special guests with us that we'll be introducing here in just a few minutes. And in calling our meeting to order, the first item on our agenda, and by the way, we do have agendas here on the dais if anyone would like to grab one to follow along. But the first item of our agenda is to call on Miss Gail Fleming with Breast Cancer Awareness Foundation. And Gail, I'll let you take the microphone. She is going to share a little bit about this month and what the work that you do with the Breast Cancer Awareness Foundation. And then I'll have you offer the prayer, and then Councilman Folk will lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance. So Gail,
Okay.
we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us. I'm Gail Fleming. I'm a 23-year breast cancer survivor myself. I was diagnosed in 1997, and very fortunately, I caught it very early. I also worked in the mammogram department up until about 17 years ago, and I'm one of those that, or anybody if you, in your specialty, you, especially the medical field, you kind of deny it, and then you get it checked out, and everybody says, oh, it's okay, it's okay. But luckily, mine was stage 1, which was very good and was very early. I encourage all women and men as well to check their breast, because it is not just a female thing. There has been many, many men in this community that have gotten breast cancer. Because of my breast cancer, and because I was fortunate to have insurance, I saw a need working in the mammogram department at the hospital. There were many women that were unfortunate to have either minimal insurance or no insurance. And I wanted to find a way to give back. And so that's when the Breast Cancer Awareness Foundation became about. Myself and several of my friends got together, and we started the Breast Cancer Foundation to help other women with everyday living expenses. Now, we don't help the doctors, and we don't pay for exams, but we help them with everyday living expenses, like their, say if they have no insurance, we pay for their breast forms, we pay for their bras, we pay for their sleeves if by chance they end up getting lymphedema in their arm. We have paid for rent because they've had to be unemployed. We've paid electric bills, we've bought food. We've helped a few families with actually Christmas because they were unemployed, they had no money. And so we were fortunate to be able to do that. This year, because of COVID, we are unable to do our normal fundraisers. Usually what we'll do is the first Saturday of October, we celebrate the fact that we beat breast cancer. Whether you're a day survivor or you're a 40-year survivor, it doesn't matter. You celebrate the fact that we have beaten breast cancer, even if we're still going through the process. That is one of our biggies, that we go out there and we celebrate. And we actually have a brunch, which we were unable to do because I didn't want to expose any of the survivors to something. Even though we were taking all precautions, we didn't want to take that chance. And we always do a breast cancer auction. Unfortunately, you can't have an auction without having a bunch of people together, you know, to where they're close together and that. So this year we are unable to do anything as far as raising funds. But the other day I was contacted by one of our, by actually Ashley's Home, and they were going to make a donation to the foundation for a gift certificate to be used at the auction. Well, instead what they're doing is they're actually doing baskets, and they're raffling them off to the community, and they're also doing a special breast cancer basket for a survivor. So we're very fortunate that we have other groups that want to turn around and help us because they've been touched in some way. And a lot of people don't know about us. Some people do. A lot of people don't know about us because it hasn't affected them. But sooner or later, it will affect each and every one of us. So I just pray that you continue to pray for us, and if you have the opportunity and want to support us, then we'd be more appreciative.
Do you have a website or a
We-
social media site or anything like that we could share with everybody?
We actually have both.
Okay.
We had the Breast Cancer Awareness Foundation,
Okay.
and then actually on Facebook, we do have the Breast Cancer of Tift area.
Area, okay.
So either way there, so that you can
Great.
contact us.
Okay.
Plus, you can contact me at Never the Same Boutique. I kind of got into that because being a survivor, and I ended up having some back surgery because of my work. I jumped into it with a leap of faith, and it has been a blessing. It's a business for me, but it's a ministry for me. And being able to talk to other women that are going through breast cancer, you know, it has helped them because been there, done that.
Sure.
And so it's just, I'm just fortunate and blessed. So let's say a prayer. Dear Heavenly Father God, we just thank you for this day and the many blessings that you've bestowed upon each and every one of us. I just pray, dear Lord, that you will be with our country at this time, dear Lord, and just be with each and every one. I just say a special prayer for all the breast cancer survivors, dear Lord. I just pray that you will just wrap your arms around them, dear Lord, and that your will be done. I ask again, I'd just like to thank you again for what you are and who you are in each and every one of our lives. I ask all this in your precious and holiest of names. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Jack. And Gail, thank you so much. Thank you for the work that you and your team do. We really do appreciate that. And Tifton's such a caring community. And so I'm glad to hear that in spite of sort of the crazy times we're in right now, you still have people that are reaching out and wanting to help and support. So thank you for what you do. We greatly appreciate it. And thank you for being here this evening and saying that beautiful prayer. That means a lot to us. Thank you. Okay, you have your agenda in front of you, and Jessica has sent out our packet of information that includes our minutes. So at this point in time, I will take an approval of the agenda unless someone, or a motion to that effect, unless someone has any changes that you'd like to make to the agenda. So moved. Okay, thank you, MJ. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and we have several several meeting minutes to review. We've had several special called meetings, and like I said, Jessica sent those out to us, so you've had the opportunity to review those. So I will take a motion concerning the minutes that were submitted to us.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All righty. Do we have any public comments, Jessica? If there was anyone here that wanted to address the council from a public standpoint, we would just need to have you sign in. I don't think there's anybody that didn't have any. Okay. All right. Now, we have two presentations. We have some special guests. Our first presentation is a proclamation for Retired Educators Day. These glasses keep sliding down my nose here. And let me read you the proclamation, and then I'm going to invite our guest here from our Retired Educators group to come up and join me, and I'll sign this. So I think, why don't y'all go ahead and come on up and just kind of gather. Where do you need us to be, Jonathan? Do you want to say from here, or? Okay. Okay, face that way. Okay, ladies, y'all come on up a little bit closer, and I'll read you the proclamation, and then we'll sign it, and then I will present it to you. So we greatly appreciate you being here this evening. Okay, we can do that. All right, the proclamation says, whereas the governor of the state of Georgia has proclaimed the day of Sunday, November 1st, 2020 as Retired Educators Day in Georgia, and there are more than 130,000 retired educators in Georgia, 27,000 plus of whom are members of the Georgia Retired Educators Association. The required educators of Georgia donate thousands of hours of volunteer service and make invaluable contributions to the welfare of their respective communities across the state. And it is appropriate that a day be designated for citizens to express their appreciation for the contributions that retired educators have made and continue to make for the betterment of human lives and for our society. And local churches will recognize those lasting contributions made by retired educators in this community. And now, therefore, I, Julie B. Smith, Mayor of the City of Tifton, do hereby proclaim the day of November 1st, 2020 as Retired Educators Day, and call upon the citizens of Tifton to join me in observing that day in an appropriate manner, honoring all retired educators. Given under my hand and seal of office, the office of mayor on this 19th day of October in the year of our Lord 2020. So that is our proclamation. So ladies, I'm going to sign this and present this to you. So thank you for what you do for Tifton. We greatly appreciate that. All right, there is our proclamation. And who wants to be the lucky recipient?
Sherry has on the...
You have on the official red badge. I'll give it to you. How about that?
We appreciate
Well,
you.
thank you
And thank
so
you for your
much.
support
Well,
for
thank
Tift County
you.
retired educators.
We greatly appreciate it. Listen, none of us, we all can think back to various teachers and people involved in education that have had impact upon us in our lives and our community. So thank you for continuing to give back to Tifton, and we're a better place as a result of that. So we greatly appreciate it. So thank you. Thank you so much.
you. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay, and we have another presentation. And Miss Lily, you and your group want to come over here and join us? This is our proclamation concerning Go Light Up Your World Day. And I know you'll want to talk about this special event, so I'll do this quickly and give you a few minutes to share with us everything that's going on. All righty. Whereas, as a nonprofit collaborative, the Tift County Commission on Children and Youth shares the Georgia Family Connections focus of improving the conditions for children, families, and communities by serving as the local decision-making body and bringing community partners together to develop, implement, and evaluate plans that address the serious challenges facing Georgia's children and families. And by working closely with various community partners, TC3Y, that's your official code name, is able to foster local relationships, increase policymakers' awareness of local issues, put into action proven practices, and leverage additional funding to support the community plan for Tift County, and having luminaries lit throughout the county at the same time with the same mission of joining together for our children's best interest while envisioning that anywhere you go in Tift County, you will see the light and recognize how unified we are as a community in our efforts to ensure that children have a safe and caring environment is the vision of this community-wide event. By working together with faith-based organizations and community agencies, clubs, businesses, and individuals on this specific day, TC3Y strives to keep the youth of Tift County safe and out of gangs by offering alternative positive activities with hopes that throughout the year, and especially on this day, our community will provide encouraging, constructive programs for our youth that encourage involvement in positive activities. Now, therefore, I, Julie Smith, Mayor of the City of Tifton, on behalf of the Tifton City Council, do hereby proclaim October 21st as Go Light Up Your World Day for the City of Tifton. And I encourage all citizens to join me in working with the Tift County Commission on Children and Youth as we endeavor to provide the best community and environment for the children, youth, and families in Tift County. Given under my hand and seal, this seal of the City of Tifton, this 19th day of October 2020. So let me sign this. Thank you. And while I'm signing this, if you want to share with us what's going on that day and what makes that day so special.
I think that, having been here before, that all of us are familiar at this point in time. This is actually the 7th year that we've done this. And the community has really embraced this event. 7 years ago when we started this, we started out with 7 sites. And those were churches that we had been able to enlist in things. We had a vision. We knew what we wanted to do. We knew that we targeted churches because they already had groups that would meet, youth groups. And that's what we were working for, is safe and stable and healthy, productive lifestyles for the youth. So we did it, and then we thought about the time. So we thought about a time that was appropriate. So we knew that Halloween, kids were out everywhere. And at the time, we were looking a lot about gangs and things. And so we wanted to make sure that kids were protected as well. So we thought about Halloween. So we chose a Wednesday before Halloween so that we could have programs with the kids to talk about being safe and stable and healthy. And then also that hooks on with Red Ribbon Week, when we're discussing drugs and different things. So we put it all together as a program that's options, where we have pledge cards that they can use. This year is going to look different because we're not going to have as many group activities. And so we're working a lot virtually. And to tell you how far we came in 7 years as a community, we had 7 sites to begin with. I counted right before I came. We still have some that we haven't heard from. We have approximately 100 sites now.
Oh, wow.
So
That's great.
It is.
That's
It is. It is. No, we give the community a round of applause because
Wonderful.
our vision is becoming more and more a reality, because last year we were able to, almost any way you go out of Tifton into Tift County and out, there were luminaries at some point in time. And so we have communities, we have a couple of subdivisions. We had one last year, which incidentally, Filiberto was the one who made sure, had 25 houses within that community. And now we have a couple of others that have been added, subdivisions and streets.
Wonderful.
Because our vision is that it's not just for agencies, it's not just for churches, but it's for the community. And for us to embrace our youth and to know that it takes the whole community to make sure our kids are safe and healthy and productive, and that's what we're working toward. And we thank you each year for proclaiming this day. And also, I'm leaving this sign because y'all will be putting a display up, and this is your sign that goes in your yard. You'll see these signs all over.
Thank you.
And that just sort of joins us together as we do the event. And I hope that everybody in this room next year will be participating.
There you go.
So,
There you
yeah.
go.
And thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
what you do with the Tift County Commission on Children and Youth. It's so important. And I tell you, especially this day and age, I mean, it's sad that we have to have these type of events for that safety, but the reality is we do. And so thank you to your organization for coordinating this and all that you do to help the youth of our community. Thank you very much.
And thanks to each of you.
Well, thank you. Let's
Thank
give them
you.
another round of applause. We'll make sure that everybody can see it. So,
Okay, great. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. All right, the next items on our agenda are our consent agenda, and I will remind you that we have discussed all of the items in our workshops. Sometimes it can seem like we're just voting on things, but we have discussed these and emailed back and forth and talked about all the items on the consent agenda. We can take them individually or we can take them all together, whatever is your pleasure.
I move we approve them in total.
In total, okay, so we have a motion to approve all the items on the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, MJ. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The next items relate to ordinances, and if you'll recall at our workshop, we did have a public hearing concerning the annexation and then the rezoning of 1.47 acres on 40th Street. So we'll take item number 8, which is our...
May I have to say that I'll have to
You
recuse
need to recuse?
myself.
Okay. So we'll allow...
Conflict.
Huh?
I have a conflict.
Okay. We'll allow just a minute for Vice Mayor Ehlers to step
We're
out.
trying to forget you.
Thank you for reminding me of that. All right, that being said, I will take a motion concerning the annexation of the 1.47 acres on 40th Street.
Motion.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jack. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and related to that is now the rezoning of those 1.47 acres to R14 residential. So I'll take a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All right. So we have motion second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Leave them in the, no, just kidding.
You know, the last time I did, I forgot about it.
Real quick,
Well, yes.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
On your educators proclamation here, we still have a.
We called that,
okay.
Jessica called it, yeah, that was in our packet, so the correct one is the one that they received is corrected, but thank you for noticing that, yeah.
Trying to make sure.
Jessica caught that, so, yeah, we got that fixed, so thank you. All right, we have a couple of items under new business. These are alcohol, the first one was alcohol license for Logan's Roadhouse located at 910 West 7th Street, and that application is in your packet. So I will take a motion concerning that alcohol beverage license.
You
So
want some
moved.
information on that? That's a new one.
Yeah, is it new?
This is, they did submit their renewal, but they're wanting, their 2020 license updated. Logan's has been going through in a bankruptcy, and so they finalized that bankruptcy and dissolved their, previous corporation. So the only thing that's changed is the corporation. The licensee and the manager are remaining the same.
Okay.
So I just wanted to get it on there so we could, update their account and switch it
Sure.
over.
Okay, all right, and that is in your, that's in your packet here, so,
I move we approve.
okay, so we have motions or second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, and then I think we may have some updated information. If you recall, at the workshop, we talked about some changes on our Code of Ordinances and zoning table for uses for a banquet, meeting, and event center, and then also for the surface mining. Danny, is there any, or Rob, is there any update or anything we need to be aware of?
Well, let me get this ball rolling here.
Okay.
Basically, as you know, we've been looking at conditional uses and whether or not we want to keep conditional uses or not. And one of these conditional uses, had to do with bars and restaurants, could be bars. It was my understanding from City Council that basically, event centers aren't bars, and they were something different. And to continue with the conditional use permit requirement for a bar, we thought it would be more appropriate to add to our table of uses event centers and banquet halls for the main purpose of people running the facilities out for various parties or events. So the ordinances that we looked at last week basically added the definitions for an event center or banquet hall. Also added a definition for strip mining because we do not have a use for strip mining either. And we did have some people that were doing a borrow pit, and that would have been classified as strip mining, so we needed that as a use. So we put that in the table of uses as well as definitions for these event centers. So basically what we were trying to accomplish is that people could have an event center, that they would not have to go through the conditional use permitting process in order to locate and get a license for an event center. So then the next question is, okay, if you're going to have an event center, and what we have put in there is that, okay, if you want to have an event center, we want to have some supplemental standards like we have in a lot of our other uses in our land development code. So we talked about some of those supplemental standards last week. Danny had the opportunity to go to planning and zoning, talk to them about what we are proposing to do, and see if they had some recommendations about supplemental standards for event centers. So with that in mind, we are looking to get council to kind of take a look at these supplemental standards tonight and decide which ones do you want and which ones you don't. Generally, what we were looking at particularly is that we were trying to separate out a bar from an event center. And naturally, a bar has an alcohol license and they serve alcohol. It's contemplated that an event center would not be an establishment that's licensed to sell alcohol. Rather, the event center, should they rent the facility out to a party, then if they wanted to have alcohol at the event center, at their event, then they would have that event catered by a licensed caterer under our alcohol ordinance. And under our alcohol ordinance, under the catering part, in order for you to sell any alcohol off premise, you have to have a license to do that. If a caterer wants to provide alcohol to an event or event center, that caterer then comes to the city to get an event permit. That's what's required currently. So when the caterer then comes to get the event permit, you get all the information that that's required for your application, as far as attendees, who's the host, where it's going to be located, everything that you need, to determine what this event's going to be. And once that application is made and it's approved by the city manager or his designee, then that caterer then can provide that alcohol off premise to the event center. What's important to remember is that when somebody sells alcohol off premise, there's a lot of requirement by the Department of Revenue about how to handle that alcohol. They got to account for what they're leaving, what they're taking with them, and then what they're bringing back, so the appropriate taxes can be paid on that alcohol. So what I would like to do, and with Danny's help, is kind of go through what you all feel would be appropriate supplemental standards for event centers, particularly days of operation, hours of operation. I think Planning and Zoning had some recommendations. So maybe to kick the ball off, I think I initially had suggested that an event center can be open Monday through Saturday. I think Jessica balked on that a little bit, said, well, what's wrong with Sundays? I don't have, is there any reason that an event center should not be open 7 days a week? So we can all pretty much have a consensus that an event center can have an event any day of the week. Okay. The next question is hours of operation. I had initially suggested 1 o'clock. I think Planning and Zoning was suggesting midnight. So, I mean, I'm trying to get a feel for what you all think. Sometimes wedding parties might go a little bit longer. I don't know. But would you like, as far as hours of operation, I would think 9 o'clock in the morning until, I mean, who likes midnight? Who likes 1 o'clock?
I think midnight's too early, personally. I would
What's
say
wrong with 2
1 or
o'clock?
2. I mean, whatever if a bar can be.
I think
open
what's wrong with
for
2
that.
o'clock?
I'm sorry, Jen?
2 o'clock.
Do you want to keep it the same as a bar?
I think we should.
Yeah.
Okay. Is
Personally,
everybody?
I mean, that's just me.
I agree.
Should we,
Fine with that.
should this be workshop edition?
Pardon?
Are we answering these questions
Well-
right now to vote on?
Yeah, because we're on a tight time frame for one's trying to get open. That's what we had at the last workshop, and then, then we sent it to Planning and Zoning, which is what we do, and then they've made these recommendations, so. But, I would, unless anyone has any heartburn with following the same hours as a bar, I think we ought to that makes it simple, it's easy to remember. Just do 2 a.m.
Well, what we could do, because the way this is going to be handled is that if you will give me what you feel tonight, and then I can go ahead and draft the ordinance. On November the 2nd, we'll have a public hearing, and then we can have further discussion as to whether or not you want to make any changes to the ordinance. And then when somebody moves to adopt it, certainly somebody can propose an amendment, and we can take it down that road if you feel like
So we're just having a discussion, we're not actually.
Correct.
That's right, we're just talking through it tonight. But again, our public hearing set for November the 2nd, we want to go ahead and take action on it on that day. So what I was really trying to hope to get from you all tonight was just, what are your thoughts now? I can go ahead and put that in the ordinance. We can have the public hearing on the 2nd. We can discuss it further. When Tony makes a motion, make any suggested amendments to it, and still proceed with the adoption once you've all determined what, exactly how you want it.
So we're trying to keep it away from a bar, but we're going to follow the bars.
Just the time frame, that haven't closed down.
Well, so just following along those lines, one of the things that I had proposed is that there not be any loitering outside of the facility or in the parking lot. I mean, what I'm envisioning is that we don't want to have a mess out there with an event. Keep particularly with the alcohol, keep it confined with the event center, not having loitering outside the parking lot, and trying to keep it what we would all think is a private party.
And they were only allowed in general business and commercial downtown zoning, is that correct?
That's correct.
I want to be sure. So it's the same places that a bar would be able to go. The difference is, are they selling alcohol or are they not selling alcohol? So that, but the timing of it is, to me, incomprehensible. consequence? I mean, was there any particular reason that planning and zoning said midnight? Was there something they were aware of, or?
Mayor, can I answer that, please?
Yeah.
Because we, just exercising some caution here, because if you align it with a bar, that means they close at, or stop serving at 2, then they have an hour to really get, this last call is at 2, then they have an hour to clean everything up, and alcohol is not be able to be on the premises. So if you do align it with the bar, then that means the police department is going to have to deal with that. And an hour is an hour. It's very sensitive when you talk about event centers.
That makes sense. I didn't think about that.
But more importantly, I also caution you about the loitering, because if you allow it and people loiter for an hour, then that's more on the PD,
Right.
and that's where we've seen a lot of the trouble. So
Right.
I'd say that to have caution. I'm sorry, Wes, we're talking about this now, but we do have an applicant that's been pending. And again, we've been trying to do what we needed to do along the timelines, and we're just trying to get what you think in your mind, so Rob could get busy with the ordinance so we could put this forward. But again, I heard about where event centers are able to go. We just need to be really mindful of that, because it'll.
So staff recommendation would be then that we back that time up to midnight or 1, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so Mayor, Council, Rob, Pete, if y'all don't mind, I'll just go through what Planning and Zoning said in the meeting. So they reviewed this thing inside and out. I didn't give them any information. I said, just tell me what you think. Give me your recommendations for the mayor and council. So their thought was, in order for it to keep from turning into a bar, that midnight or 1 o'clock for a private event, they felt that was justified. They also felt that event centers should be self-regulating, and that it is the building owner's responsibility to take care of their building and make sure all the applicable laws are. They also felt a manager or a security officer should be on site if there is going to be served alcohol. Once again, these are only recommendations for you all to take into account. And that's to help prevent underage drinking. That was one of their concerns. And me and Rob, we've kicked this around a lot. They wanted to know if there was a distinction that could be made for a nonprofit family event versus a commercial event. So that way you could require a caterer for a commercial, more of a commercial event versus a family event. Because if you have a wedding or a graduation party, they may not be able to afford a caterer. So that was one of their concerns.
Dan, can I just,
Absolutely.
Can I just come on that? You know, let's say Danny and I have talked about that, and I certainly understand that, people might want to, cut costs, where they can. But I don't see where you can, say this is, one group and you can get your own beer. This group, you've got to get a caterer. I'm not sure what they mean by a commercial event. When we're talking about an event center, we're really talking about a private party or a convention, not a commercial event where you're getting a band and getting a cover charge. So that's why, at least in my opinion, that by requiring a caterer for every event, you know that you've got a licensed caterer handling the alcohol, and you just can't go down a slippery slope about trying to say,
And that would be only if they're serving alcohol. If they're not serving alcohol, then they don't have to hire a caterer.
That's correct.
That's just for serving alcohol.
That's
Okay.
correct.
So I just think that's a slippery slope. And, if you're going to have alcohol, say it's got to be catered,
Right,
and then move on down the road.
right.
And I agree with Rob. Surprisingly, huh, Rob?
Really?
They also felt in the noise ordinance should be enforced. In the downtown area, that noise ordinance doesn't exist. So their thought was that there may be an event at 2 o'clock in the afternoon while business right next door on a party wall is going on. So they felt that it may be necessary to make sure that they comply with the noise ordinances. So that's basically planning and zoning's recommendations, and Rob's talked to you about some about his. One I wanted to point out specifically is they're intended for private social events, conventions, and civic events, and are not intended for use as a public event facility where members of the general public are admitted and charged a fee for admission. Planning and zoning recognized this as well, and they thought that was appropriate to keep somebody from renting an event facility, setting up a band, hiring a caterer, and charging a cover charge at the door, and basically you have a bar. So just wanted to put that out there. They recognize that as good too. And they said that the time would help alleviate some of that. If you shut them down earlier, 11, 12, 1 o'clock, that would help go towards that as well, or they felt it would. All right, Rob's pretty much went over the rest. Yes, sir.
Explain that last.
Sir?
Shutting down at 11, 12, or 1 would help go toward what?
We'll go towards keeping it from turning it into a bar. People staying out real late and drinking and carrying on. My bedtime is 8 o'clock too, Jack.
I mean, there's already things in there that says it's not operating as a bar. It's not open to the general public. I mean, so we can kid ourselves and think, well, if we shut down at 1 o'clock, therefore any issues are going away, because that ain't gonna happen. I mean, it's not a bar. If we realize it's operating as a bar, then they lose their license. I mean, if we find out they're just letting anybody in general, then they lose their license, to me.
See, I thought when we said 2 o'clock was closing, I thought that meant 2 o'clock you have to be out. But it's not that. It's 2 o'clock and you have an hour to be out, right? So if that being said, I have no problem backing it up to 1 o'clock personally to give them time to.
Well, but it's not a bar. It's
No,
not
no,
a,
no, no, I'm just
so,
saying.
But you can say different for this facility. At 2 o'clock, you've got to be gone.
That means we have to close at 1 to give them to 2.
No. We can have different hours or different set for an event center, which is not a public business.
Is that the case then? If you say 2 o'clock is the shut off and you have to be gone, do they get that hour that a bar gets?
We could do it either way that you would like. So if you want it to 2 o'clock, you got to be done and out of there.
Yeah.
If they can clean up in 15 minutes, they can go till 1:45. If they need an hour to clean up, then
Okay, see,
they.
that's what I was thinking.
I guess my thing is what event would last that long?
You'd be surprised.
I mean, ideally, what I would say do is, okay, hey, listen, cut it off at 12, and if they still want to go party afterwards, hey, we got plenty of bar establishments in our community, as long as we have a sober driver, you can go over there and visit those locations. But, I mean, I just see how this is going.
It's for your consideration.
Yeah.
I will, and I know that I put my 2 cents in that I do the alcohol. And what you have mentioned is going to dramatically change what I've told people for the past, 8 years. And the way that the Georgia law looks at alcohol is if you have a private event, no matter where it's at, if it's in a public place or at your backyard, if you buy that alcohol and you don't have a cash bar or pay for a ticket, then you don't have to have a caterer. So I think that if this is just for event centers, that's okay, but there's other places like, I don't know if you would consider it, but the museum, they rent out for weddings a lot, or a bridal shower or something, and where they just have a little bottle of champagne, that's still alcohol, but there is probably not a need for an alcohol caterer. So that's going to change a lot of other places that are rentals for events on a smaller level. So the way we always looked at, as I explained, if y'all understood that, the way if somebody came to me and said, do I need an alcohol permit for this event? And the questions I ask, is this a private event? Are you selling a ticket to get in the door? Or do you have a cash bar? And if they said no to all of those, you know, that they wouldn't be required. They can go buy their beer and,
What regulates when they say no to that here, but then do it at the door?
I have not had that happen.
Wasn't that?
I mean, mainly
He said,
those
what if they say
people
no to
are,
that here, but then they go do what they want to do anyway, and that's not, they say, they answer her questions with a no,
Yeah.
but then they go out and they're charged admission, or they're selling, or, you know, they basically just.
Well, they just charge for the wristband and the beer's free.
And they can do it
that
once till
would
we
not,
catch it.
that's the same thing as tickets. But a lot of those are like your nonprofit events. I mean, the hospital does a event every year. I mean, they get them because they're, you know, nonprofit or whatever. But there are a lot of the ones that are doing it. It's a lot of nonprofit type. But
This is a-
weddings, I get
yeah,
a lot of weddings that are at the Agorama.
That
and
was-
the museum.
That was planning and zoning's concern, as well as these smaller nonprofits. They just don't have the funding to hire a caterer, and they may want to have alcohol at their event. And they can go and buy a case of beer for the same price as what they'd get a six-pack from a caterer for. That was one of the things that they identified.
All right, y'all.
Well, I mean, you're gonna get yourself in a situation, because just like you said, you got the art museum, you got everybody else, they're gonna be calling, they're gonna be asking, because they're gonna have to abide by the same rules.
Yeah.
So, you gotta figure it out.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is it, once we do this, and is the museum now an event center?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask Rob. I mean, from a legal standpoint, I agree with that, because this is a bona fide business that someone comes in and has a business license for, to say, I'm an event center. We're seeing a lot of activity with that. So if you're an event center, then you are going to rent it out to birthdays, parties, et cetera, and these are the guidelines. Nonprofits, the museums, et cetera, have parties, fundraisers, et cetera. From a legal standpoint, are they the same, or would they be considered different?
In my mind, you know, if somebody is a event center as defined in what we're proposing, that's a facility that
I
rents
agree.
out for events.
I
If you
agree.
have, I mean, a bar, for instance, they could rent out for a private party and sell alcohol because they have an alcohol license. Now, when you start getting down to, like, you know, the museum, and they want to have a function, and they want to have alcohol there at the function. So what, you know, and like I say, this is not an easy problem, because we're trying to prevent one thing where, and then naturally that might affect something else. So if, that's why, at least in my mind, if you start, you know, splitting the hairs about the museum or other facilities that can have alcohol, you know, and bring it themselves and serve it, I just see that as a slippery slope, you know, to where you're going to draw that line and how you're going to, you know, enforce it. And that's why you talk about, when you talk about caterers, I mean, the reason why you talk about alcohol caterers is because that is a way to regulate off-premise alcohol. If you don't require a caterer, then I just think I just think you're opening the door to just about anything.
All right, so let me ask you a question here. All right. We already have ordinances on the books that talk about catering licenses or alcohol license for caterers, right?
Yes.
So basically what we're looking at is defining what an event center is, because if I'm an event center, if I want a building, it's just a space, and somebody, you know, comes to me and says, hey, I want to use your space to throw a party, I'm going to say, okay, well, here's a list of caterers, unless if I own the building, I got a separate LLC with a staff that will do that, and I'd have my own catering license. I want to, you know, promote myself. We already have, so we're just going to define what an event center is and how long they can open. Is that what we need to do?
If I may, so the reason why is because in the table of uses, an event center isn't defined, and it's currently defined as a conditional use. If so an event center is similar to a bar or a lounge. So it's classified as that, so therefore it has to go through the conditional use permitting, which takes roughly 75 days to get through. So that's the reason why we're trying to separate it
So
out.
now we want to define that, so there's no conditional use process.
So,
that
well,
has
so
to go.
that you don't have to wait 75 or more days to open your business. And that's where we got into this, is we had someone in our downtown who was ready to rent a space to a proposed, prospective tenant for this very thing. Well, they didn't want to wait, and I can understand not wanting to wait the 75 days that they're not getting rent, that the prospective tenant's not doing business, et cetera. So, and we've got others that are coming. So this isn't the only one. So we were trying to create something that would allow them, as long as you meet, just like any other zoning and business permission, as long as you meet these specific requirements, you can get your license, you can open as an event center, or any, whatever any other business would be, and this are the rules that you have to operate under.
All right, so let me just I'm just trying to wrap my brain around it. So I own the building, you got an idea to create an event business that's going to go out there and say, hey, listen, do this and this, you can do this at my location. All right. And then, so I thought that you said something about the owner of the building is responsible for making sure that all that's handled. Would that fall back on the lease?
That was the thoughts with the planning and zoning. They felt
Do you
that.
remember when, let me give you an example. Do you remember when there was a proposed event center that was going to have parties and different things, events where there would be alcohol, per whatever requirements the city established, that was going to go in the shopping center near BAM? And you remember he was very upset, Phil was very upset about that, and said, I can't have my business, which caters to children,
Right.
and their families, located next door to where there might be a rip-roaring party going on, on a Saturday afternoon at 7 o'clock.
Right.
He was very concerned about that. Well, come to find, and so we started to react to that. Well, it comes to find out that the covenants of that particular shopping center don't allow any place to go in that will sell alcohol. So we sort of got ahead of ourselves because it wasn't our problem to worry about, it was the property owner's problem to worry about, because his covenant specifically said, in this shopping center, nobody can sell alcohol. So we kind of jumped out and said, oh gosh, we've got to do something as the city. Well, we really didn't. So there may be a property owner out there who says, I'm going to rent my facility in my shopping center or in my downtown building or whatever, but I, as the property owner, will not permit alcohol. So that's, we're trying to create regulation that we don't have to, because the property owner has already regulated that. That's just kind of an example of what had happened in that situation with BAM.
Right.
It wasn't going to be able to happen anyway. Once this proposed, of course, it never did happen. They never went in, but had they investigated further with the property owner, they would have found out we can't serve alcohol.
And-
So,
And
Just so,
just,
it's kind of going full circle real quick, just so, Wes, I think you're asking a few questions, but what happened is that we did not have a use for event centers. And because event centers were most closely related to bars and lounges in our uses, that put them in the category of having to get a conditional use permit. And so you all thought, well, wait a minute, maybe we ought to, I think it was MJ, so maybe we ought to come up with, a definition for an event center so we can separate them out. If you got an event center, it's one thing, but if you have a bar, it's another. So by going this route, by allowing an event center in certain zoning districts as a matter of right with supplemental standards, they don't have to go through the conditional use permitting process. But as it stands right now, council still has, the ability to regulate the location of bars because they would require a conditional use permit.
So let me ask you this. So if I had a space, and I was leasing it to Julie Entertainment LLC, could Julie just go get an event permit and then give a list to her client of the caterers that are available in Tifton? And boom, there you go.
Well, basically, that's why we're trying to figure out, okay, how do you regulate an event center? So it's not just an open public party band admission. That's why, at least in my mind, and I think it's Chip down there, my lady speaking with him, you know, the idea is that the event center is something where you're renting out to a private party, and, you know, they don't have an alcohol license. If you want to have alcohol, it's catered. So I don't know, I mean, I certainly appreciate the fact that, you know, you might have instances where the museum might want to host an event. Well, that's fine, but then I don't know why and if they wanted to have alcohol at the event, then according to our ordinance, I mean, you would get an alcohol caterer to go, who's licensed to go get a permit.
Well, we already got that on the book.
It's on the books.
I know, so I mean, what are we sitting here doing?
Because
Well,
we're
because
creating a
what
new
we're-
zoning classification, we've got to attach that to.
Because one of the questions is that, you know, if, you know, an event center, you know, we have to define an event center, and then, you know, put in the ordinance that if you want to serve alcohol at an event, you need to go get a license, you know, caterer to cater alcohol to the event. That's
So
what I
that's
see the process.
So you saying the art museum already does that?
I'm sorry?
The art museum already does that?
I'm sorry, I'm
But
just.
it's
Do they
Most
already,
museum already
do
does
they
that.
already get a catering license? for
Are
the
they
art
doing
museum?
that?
Well, they should, you know, they should.
If they sell tickets
Okay.
for like a fundraiser event, but if there's a private wedding, I've never licensed a private event.
Right.
Like a wedding, like, I know there's plenty of wedding receptions there.
Right.
But, I mean, does the ordinance,
So the ordinance that we're proposing is gonna make everybody get a caterer.
well, even without that though, does the museum have to have it regardless?
I mean, I would say
Based-
they have to, they should.
I thought that they should too, I thought that they.
Based on what's happening today, if they want to have a wedding reception at the museum and have alcohol, do they have to have a caterer? And what I'm hearing is yes.
That's
And
what
the
our
museum.
But I'm also hearing
manager should
that we don't
be
require.
checking that.
But if I just want to have a party at the museum just because, and I want to bring my own alcohol, I can bring my own alcohol.
You could right now, they do allow that, as long as you didn't have a cash bar.
Is that a city-owned property?
It's owned by the Downtown Development Authority.
It's a downtown development authority property?
But if we wanted to do something, like when we do Rhythm and Ribs in Fullwood Park, we have to get a caterer.
We have to get a caterer, we also have to have a event permit.
That's
That's what I'm saying.
festival.
Why can't we just do that for these folks? If you have a space that's available for rent, I mean, he can lease it out if he wants to. Somebody's got a business plan for that, that's fine, I guess. And then they would just get an event permit for their event.
Well, what they're gonna be doing is coming in here every day, getting event permits
Right.
for, you know,
Yeah, that's their
numerous.
business's
Because their
events.
business is securing events in their location. So
Well, I
they're
mean,
gonna come in and they have to come in and see Jessica and say, look, okay, on Thursday night I'm having the, you know, Krasinski party, on Friday night it's the Smith party, I gotta get separate event permits for each of these.
Couldn't
And
we
it's-
create some sort of a business license or something like that for an event?
But that's what it is, for an event center.
Well, I thought we were regulating property and telling where it
No,
can go.
no, this is just a designation. It's a designation for a business classified as an event center.
In our zoning.
Because we don't have
We
anything
didn't
like
have
that.
anything.
I've seen anything that we're sitting here talking about property, where these things can go, like if it's in general business and
No,
all that
that's
stuff.
why
No, we know where they can
I asked
go.
that question, was because I wanted to be sure that I understood that properly, because they were wanting to, you know, say we needed to regulate the hours.
All right, I'm sorry, I'm just
I
all
just
kinking
didn't
all
want
of
us to
this.
be able to have event centers in a residential area and saying, yeah, you can party till 2 o'clock in the morning. But-
Really, we've, in a couple months, we've had 3 people come in and say, I want to do an event center. And we all looked at each other and said, well, now what? Because we don't have an event center, so this is what we're trying to write it in. It's just a designation. So if someone wants the business plan, someone wants to rent the space, and they want to have an event center, a full-fledged event center, this is what we're trying
So
to
the
create.
license will be be dedicated to that location.
That's correct.
It will not be
right.
dedicated to the individual. They can go from, okay.
That's exactly right.
All right, here we go.
Okay.
All right, let's go. Next.
It happens to all of us. It does. I know it's confusing.
What we don't want, this specific site, I would use downtown or in, a shopping center, what we don't want is create an atmosphere where it disturbs others, where it becomes a mess for the police department. The caterer is just doing his or her job. The event person who runs the business has to have certain rules to follow. So we're just trying to make sure we have some parameters, and I think that's what Rob and Danny have done for you. We just need to know, examine like certain times. It's my recommendation, and I'd ask the chief to come up just from a loitering and from a time standpoint. We've got to be really careful. I think it's a great point. If they hold a party at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and there's a business next door, we've got to be mindful of that because it'll just be a police department matter after that. So we've got to be careful of noise ordinance and certainly loitering and closing time.
Okay, so this is gonna be for everybody.
What's that, Steve? What'd you say?
It's hard for us to regulate the noise.
Sure.
Also.
Right.
Because I can stand out there and not hear no noise, but you could be inside and hear bass.
Right.
And that's what aggravates people, and we can't control that.
Right.
Because when we pull up, there is no noise, but inside somebody's house, there is bass.
Sure.
And there's gonna be bass in the building, so they're gonna complain about it, but then all we can do is walk there and ask them to turn it down, because we can't hear it when we pull up.
Okay, so when this is put in place, other meeting halls and banquet halls or event spaces are gonna have to abide by these same rules that we're about to put in place. Like the art museum is ABAC part of the city as well, because at the end of the day, they're event spaces because they rent their spaces out for people to have events. So when you put this in place, they're gonna have to abide by these rules.
I think that they do now already. I'm not certain about that, but if you think back on the events that you've been to, say at the UGA Conference Center, where there has been alcohol sales,
Well,
they've all
I
been.
know they do.
They get a
They've all been
permit.
catered.
They get a permit. Museum gets a permit, right? If they have a function, a fundraiser, they come in.
Just, you need to be
Yeah.
clear, because what's gonna
So,
happen.
yeah, so in the zoning, so a museum will be classified, I can't remember the exact zoning, museum will be a museum, and it's classified in the right zoning.
Okay.
Same thing with UGA Conference Center.
So you're saying their primary business is not.
I agree. I know where you're going.
Because what's gonna happen, they're gonna call around, and when this event space doesn't care for them to get a caterer license, they're gonna go to that business. And this event space is gonna say, well, they didn't make me get one.
Okay.
Well, one of the, and Jessica brought that up about the UGA Conference Center. I mean, an option is to exclude state-owned facilities, or, you can do that. So, I mean, I knew that was a concern about the UGA Conference Center. You can exclude them from the requirement of getting a license.
Yeah. Rob, let's clear this up, because I think there's some confusion. So museum, conference center, et cetera, they have to, if they bring in a caterer for a event, they have to come and see Jessica and say, we're hosting an event, we're gonna have alcohol, we have a caterer, here's all the things, okay? Yes, here's your permit, okay? The event
That's a
center.
special event.
Wow, special event, yeah, special event of happening an event, okay.
I'm just saying from what I know, from the other people renting those spaces, there's been parties there that there's no caterers there.
There's no
So
what?
that's what I'm saying. Like,
There's no caterer.
there's no caterer, there's no caterer's license for when they have events.
That happens, we get that. So someone coming into TIF and say, look, I want to open an event center, birthdays, parties, etc. So their business plan says, event center, this is what we're gonna do, we have a space, we're renting, here's my business plan, we're gonna do X amount of events. So they have the caterer is gonna have to follow the same rules as the museum, as the conference center, etc. So I don't see it as different. I could be
So let me
wrong.
ask you this. So let's just say that situation happens, MJ. Now, would it be the police department's responsibility to go in there and say, hey, listen, this is an illegal, whatever, and then you're gonna have to exit everybody out? Because, it's gonna happen. You're right.
Or we just gonna wait on the phone calls. Somebody's gonna get mad. Like
So-
I say, somebody's gonna
I
have
don't,
a space.
I don't
I don't
understand,
get that.
I don't understand the analogy, I guess.
So let me let me try to put that in context, because Jessica made that point in one of our emails. So, and to Pete's point, take a restaurant. If they have an area, they can rent that out. They have a license. They're legit, so they can rent that out. Now, are they likely to rent the entire facility? No, because the money isn't there for the restaurant to shut down and allow them. So this space, this event space, is like an exclusive space for a party. So the museum is a museum.
Yeah, which is what we talk, like if I go to the local and say I want to have a private party
Right.
with 25 of my closest friends.
Right.
They're already licensed
Yeah,
to
they're
do
licensed.
everything.
That's
So
not
is
an
that what you're
event center.
saying? I guess
No, what I'm saying is, these rules that we're we want to put in are going to be for these new event spaces that are coming about. So once you put these rules in, those other event spaces and facilities are going to have to abide by these rules as well.
But don't they
And
already?
it's for, but it's,
But we
I
don't
think what-
They
have,
do,
we
we
don't
don't make
have
it
event
change.
centers because we didn't have that zoning.
but what MJ's saying,
But
When
what I'm
they
saying,
get
those things are going to be technically up under these things because they're going to be operating in some time in these manners of be rented out for an event. That's what I'm saying.
it's like,
Oh, okay, I want to hear from Abby and Bruce. Okay.
All right, I have a question. So what, under the Museum of Arts and Heritage, what does their business license say that they are operating as?
They don't have one.
Okay, well, what about
It's operating as a
the
government.
Leroy Rogers Center, or what about UGA?
The TIFF Theater for Performing Arts.
ABAC.
They don't have-
I mean, Rob is going to have to exclude the UGA Center, bottom line. I mean, they have concerts there. I mean, this ordinance says that you can't offer sales, you can't charge an admission to go in these places, so they're gonna have to, their business model is on a larger scale than what, these people are trying to do. To me, this is a smaller, venue.
Is this just triggered when the business license says this business is operating as an event center?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I was just making clear was what I have told people for many years and what the state of Georgia says, and it's fine, but people are just gonna have to change. If you had a private event, if you had a wedding, if you had a baby shower, if you had whatever, and you brought your own champagne, wine, beer to that event, you did not have to have a caterer. You can do that. You can go buy stuff and bring it to some place if that event center lets you. This ordinance is not going to allow them to do that. And so to me, that changes, it's going to exclude the UGA Center. They're going to have to change, but the museum is one.
But
The
we
DD,
didn't have an event center.
yeah. I mean,
We
so
didn't
there's
have
a
an
lot
event center
of places that,
classification.
That's what,
yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's going to change the feel of what's already operating out here as that space. That's the same
Yeah,
thing she's
I mean,
saying.
I'm just saying, I was just making sure that people understood that, because people thought, oh, this is a private party, whatever, but it's gonna change. Those caterers are gonna be a little bit, busier.
Bruce, you got something?
I've got a real life example that we ran into last year with Tiffany Merchants Association, a registered nonprofit. So we started to do an event called Wine, Cheese, and Story Time. And the first one we did was in this room.
Right.
So when Jessica and I talked, what came up was that TNA had decided to their members it was free. But if they brought a guest, they had to pay $5 for the guest to come. Now watch the complexity of this. So there's a nonprofit having an event in what is basically a public facility. But because they charged that fee, Jessica said, you have to have a caterer who's licensed to serve alcohol. And we did. We used Fresco and they served right up here. Later on, we did it at the TIFF Theater, a city-owned property at that time. And again, it was the same thing. They had a ticket cost, a fee, if they brought a guest or someone that wasn't a member of TNA. So when we talk about profits and nonprofits, we have to really think through this. So there's a real-life example of the complexity. And our next event after COVID settles down will probably be at the museum. So under our current ordinance, if they have that same event, they would have to get, this is right, just that they would have to get a licensed caterer to serve alcohol at the museum before this ordinance.
If they sold a ticket or charged admission,
All right, but
If
what-
there's any cash at any time transpiring, that makes it not a private event, that makes it not a,
Well, what MJ is saying is, does the museum have to obtain the event center license as well as
treat
if I
them the
was a
same.
regular business and I owned a space out on Brumby Way and I wanted to have a spot there, that I'm gonna have to go out there and do that, but local government does not have to.
I don't think they have to have an event center license, but they have to have a caterer
Right.
to serve alcohol.
it would only be
That's
fair
the
to
difference.
treat
They
them
would
the
have, that's what I'm
same.
saying, they would have to abide by these rules.
They can operate as the museum, but today when they have liquor there, they don't necessarily get the caterer to do it. But this says they will have to.
Yeah, they'll have to, that's what I'm saying.
Something's not wrong. So,
Yeah.
anyway, this is very, this is really deep, and I hate to hold up. We were trying to have this defined, so we could put it forward, but if you are not ready, then we're gonna have to tell this applicant that we're gonna have to probably study this further and go into another month, that, this person's not gonna be able to open.
It doesn't change this necessarily, we just have to go forward to other things that it's gonna affect, and it is
Yeah,
what it
this,
is.
I mean, if this is what they want, this is what you abide by, but in the long run, it's gonna affect the ones that's out there
It's gonna
already,
affect it.
and we're gonna get the calls about it, because they are not actually asking people to get caterers license so they can drink. So when I wanna come have my shindig, I'm gonna bring all my liquor, and y'all come and drink for free, no
See, I
catering.
didn't think we could
I'm
do
not paying.
that anywhere. I guess maybe I was wrong. I thought we already had covered all of that.
No, that's what we're just saying, like, you can literally go and have drinks with
As
your
long as I
buddies.
bring it myself.
So there would be, I mean,
It could be in
what
the
I'm hearing.
backyard, I mean, where, you know, the Georgia law doesn't define that area.
I just don't want, people like other facilities that's been in business, they're gonna be like, oh gosh, now we got to abide by these new rules, or, they're gonna be there. They're gonna they're gonna shut down at 12:59. Everybody has to have a caterer's license. That's what we're about to go
But
by.
as it stands right now, if you have let's say we have a hypothetical event center now, are we saying that that hypothetical event center can bring the alcohol to the event center and serve it without any regulations at all? I mean, that's what I'm kind of hearing, is that you don't have a problem if you have an event center and somebody, has an event and they want to supply their own alcohol, that's okay. If that's what you want to do, that's fine.
Let me ask you this, underneath the event center permit, can you not allow for you to bring your own alcohol? Can
Well,
you
that's
just not allow
what,
that?
that's what y'all
This is what
doing.
this is gonna do.
That's what y'all doing, and that's fine, I'm just letting you know that that's gonna change. That's
So-
gonna change things that are already in place. That's all I was saying.
That
Sorry
doesn't
to
violate-
confuse y'all.
But does that violate Georgia law though? Okay.
No,
well
they're
then,
just,
there you
it's
go.
a more flexible.
But we've
The Georgia law on alcohol sales only
that
cares
has
when
come
it's
to us
sold.
and said, I am opening exclusively as an event center.
Right.
Until this one, and Abby and Bruce and I are very familiar with this because we've had all the meetings with the property owner. There's a property in our downtown that the owner wants to rent a space exclusively as an event center to this tenant. We don't have anything right now as an event. That's why when y'all are saying all these event centers y'all have, we don't have any event centers.
Well, then,
Right.
I mean,
that
Can we,
are
Rob, is it able-
exclusively
can we-
Operating as an event
we
center.
just need to do-
Mayor, can we grandfather in anybody that MJ's referring to? Anything,
I don't
can we
even know
grandfather
who it would
anything
be.
in?
There's no need to.
Right.
The use for the museum is government. The use for City Hall is government. So there's not
Yeah.
this is not an event center. So
Right.
if Pete, mayor, council says, hey, man, y'all can come in here and rent this right here for your graduation party, you can do that legally.
We've done like for the State Bar Association, they came in and used our room here. And so we're not an event center. Like you said, it's for a designation for a business that is exclusively an event center. That's all they do.
Right.
They don't do arts education, they don't do exhibits, they
Right.
don't do anything like that. They are exclusively to say, you can rent these 4 walls and all these tables and chairs for your birthday party, your wedding reception, your meeting, whatever you want. And you're gonna pay me, the event center coordinator. But if you wanna serve alcohol, then you've gotta go through a caterer.
So the only question is, what time do we want them to close?
Yeah, so.
And if we want them to close at 2 o'clock, we don't have to add that other hour that says you've got an hour, like a
Right.
bar, where sit there and visit and finish your drink. If you want to say
So
2 o'clock, you have to leave the premises, period.
But we've got two applicants, one official applicant, one that's coming, that they're waiting on, that they can't open their space until we define an event center.
Well,
Their purpose is event center, not government, not arts education, not anything that the theater or the Tifton Museum of Arts and Heritage or those other locations are. They're defined differently, and UGA they don't have to be excluded because their business classification, if you look at their business licensing, that's required, is not say event center. So
But I
we're
mean-
trying to facilitate the opening of these businesses as quickly as possible. So I'm very hesitant to continue to delay, because if we were gonna continue to delay, we should have just left it well enough alone, let them go through the conditional
There's
zoning,
75
wait
days
90
to do that.
days, and.
let's just
Yeah.
decide on the time.
So-
and move forward.
What time we want them to close?
2 o'clock.
Everybody good with that?
I'm good with that.
But they have to leave, none of this extra hour
Yeah, not an extra
business.
hour, it's at 2 o'clock, doors locked and lights out.
They can't be,
You
yeah.
know, Sunday, don't the bar have to close at 12 o'clock on Sunday?
I'm sorry,
What are the time limits on a bar on
they got till, the last, they
After.
serve till 2 o'clock?
Sunday?
To, all the alcohol, have to be on the table about 3.
Well, I think you could just add, I mean, wasn't there someone here that the alcohol had to follow the hours or whatever?
Okay, that's fine.
If they, I think you can add that, because the caterer can't serve alcohol.
All right, so just so I'm clear, I mean, do you want to have alcohol catered, or do you just want to take that out?
If it's for sale.
It's what you put in here.
Basically, what I have here is if you're gonna have an event at an event center, you want to serve alcohol, it's got to be catered. What I'm
Regardless.
hearing is that, what some folks are saying is that maybe I don't like that. If I'm going to have an event at an event center, I want to be able to provide my own alcohol.
No, gotta be
Yeah.
catered. Now, you might have your own catering you might have your own license to do it yourself. I don't guess there's a
Well,
problem with
most of
that.
our,
But in order to have a catering license, Jack, you have to have an alcohol, you have to have a bar, basically.
You have to have a bar.
You gotta be a license, you gotta
So
have
Wes
a
is-
license to be able to serve alcohol.
Okay, so, well, that's what, they ought to have the license.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to twist y'all's conversation out of joint, but my name's Brad Folsom. I spoke with him and Danny today. I represent probably a future applicant, which we're trying to make as a professional and as good a business plan as possible. But he fits in the middle of what y'all are talking about, because his plans, his business plans, are to always have a list of caterers for both food and alcohol, because he doesn't really want that responsibility. But at the same time, he really wants to have events where he charges people to come to those events. Nice events. I mean, he's got y'all probably heard about it, it's the building that used to be the old Harvey's over here. And he wants to bring in a band from time to time, or a comic act or whatever. He doesn't want to sell the alcohol, doesn't want to be responsible for it, wants to live up, but that's firmly in the middle of what y'all been talking about.
right.
So I have no idea whether to head down the road of a bar or an event center based on what y'all been talking about. And we're fine to go either, but it seems to me if you want that, he fits much better under an event center, because he doesn't want to have an alcohol license. But if he has any kind of paid event, he's got to have an alcohol license to go under a bar.
Right.
So there is a business plan that is between these two. And the requirement that you don't have paid events is really going to be harmful to that business plan. And I haven't seen the regulations you're looking at, but just so you will know, I mean, we're ready to come, we're seeking out meetings with Danny and Ron to kind of get that finalized and bring it to the council. So for what that's worth, I wanted you to know that that's.
And that's one that I know is coming, you know,
That's
that's when I
helpful,
said there's
because-
more coming, you know, I know that, that's on the way, so.
Let me ask you that, well, if I just started a catering company that served alcohol, and then there wouldn't be no more bars.
To be a licensed caterer, you have to have your license to sell alcohol. So I don't know, you can just be a licensed caterer.
And you may be a licensed caterer that doesn't have an on-site location. That would be somebody like Cynthia Harrison. She's a licensed caterer that can sell alcohol at an event. So if we hired her to come do an event at the TIFF Theater, she could do that, or at the UGA, or at the museum. She doesn't have but then BJ Smith, who has 41 in Maine, she has an on-site restaurant. So there's variations even within the catering of, am I competing with myself? You know, or, you know, am I just strictly catering, or am I catering and restaurant? Catering and bar and restaurant? So you have all these nuances and layers of what we're looking at.
So just to address what Brad just said, one of the this whole thing got started about conditional uses and having the council have the ability to make conditions on a bar, let's say, if it wanted to locate in a certain area. So from what I'm hearing is that, you know, the use of this potential event center, even though it's being catered, you know, the alcohol is being catered, all you're really doing is you're having a bar that's being catered. So it kind of goes against what we were trying to accomplish as far as having the ability to have conditions on bars, because if an event center is really operating as a bar, then you're losing your control to put conditions on it. So if you had something like Brad was talking about, then that would be something that you probably want to have some control on a conditional use, depending on where it's being located. So you can look at the various objective criteria and say, okay, these are things that we think this will work, but here are the conditions. So that's why we're trying to separate out the event center, because it's not a bar. And we don't need that control that we would need for a bar on conditional uses. So that's kind of where we are. Now, if an event center is going to be a bar, you might want to look at, maintaining a conditional use permit on on an event center. But that was the pushback that we were getting, because, wait a minute, I'm just an event center, I'm not a bar, and I don't want to have to go through that process. So if you're an event center, and you're not a bar, then okay, we don't need that conditional use control, or, to help make sure it's a fit for where it's supposed to go. So, you want to have the ability to get your event center up and running. You don't want to take the time to go through the process to get a conditional use permit. Then you got to make sure that you don't need a conditional use permit, because this is just an event center. This is how it's going to be operating. It's not going to be a bar.
So that's the real deal right there. So what Rob had, there wouldn't be any bars. They would all be event centers with caterers. And then nobody would go through conditional zoning.
We beat that one 6-way.
We did, and I think the horse is dead. I think that, the intent was to, if you're going to have an event center, the intent was, let's create a path for you to open an event center. Evidently, that path is not going to be muddled, because you're a bar and an event center, and you're going to cross the line. I don't know what to do. I think the road to hell is paved with good intentions. The good intentions of the council were to try to help this property owner and this prospective tenant get in to do what they want to do. And now there's a whole nother layer that's fixing to come in here. So, part of me is just saying, let's just start moving. I don't know what's.
I don't know that
Well, I
you're
think-
really,
I don't know.
but I don't know that
We
you're really a
already have
bar.
a event permit, and we already have the catering ability. What we have to do is simplify the permitting process for the event.
Just so you understand,
Is that basically at the end of the day?
if you want to have an event and you're gonna serve alcohol, then it's the caterer who comes and makes application to cater that event. Okay? So, there's, if I wanna just, have a party, I don't need an event permit. But if I'm gonna have a party with alcohol, then I have to have the cater with the caterer going to get the event permit and making the application.
But the difference is whether you charge or not.
Yeah, so
Wait, but you're not talking about a bar.
just do no sales of alcohols. So like Jessica said, if it's a private event and you're not selling tickets and you're not selling alcohol, or you're not trying to profit off of anything, then you don't have to have an event license, and I can bring a big old cooler full of beer. But if I want to have an event that has alcohol, I can't go in there. Just no alcohol.
I think
If
that's
I wanna
okay.
sell
I was
it
letting y'all know
and
that
make
was
a
gonna
profit.
change, and I think that's okay for this business type. I might wanna change one little word and exclude the UGA Center, because I think that that's a big deal.
State property.
Yeah, state and local.
Because they have a big
Apparently today, that
concert.
means we need to have a lot more discussion about this. I mean, I know it's,
I mean, if you do no alcohol, then you and I could rent the event center and take as much beer as we want in there and give it away to everybody, and everybody can drink. But if you want, me and you want to sell beer and make a profit off of it, or invite people from the public in for a ticket to come in and watch a band, then that is no longer an event
there
center.
is conditions for overselling of alcohol through the alcohol permit.
It's
right?
just about selling.
So if I were to bring a cooler full of beer, me and you just sat there and drank the whole cooler full, and
We
then
could do
decide
that.
to get in our truck and drive home,
Or if you want.
is it the property owner then responsible?
Or if I wanted if my 14-year-old wandered in there and sat down with you and started consuming.
I know. I mean,
There's a lot to it.
There's
It's
a
a
lot,
very
yeah.
complex issue.
So do you want,
to get us out tonight?
so you want to be thinking about that if somebody wants to have an event at an event center and provide alcohol, that's okay as long as they don't charge for the alcohol being sold?
Me. Mayor and Council, this is a really important subject, and we have some places in Tifton, Georgia that have really caused us some issues with all that we're talking about. I'm not talking about new or what's being proposed, but it is simply too important of a decision for you to do this, by this mode. It is just too dangerous. I will tell you that if you let one of the strings go, we could have a potential mess. If we pull the other string, it's going to change the way we do business, and that's simply not the intent. So I encourage us to go back and find some examples on some other communities that do it, that find some other language for you, and we restudy it, and we just forego this potential applicant for 1 month. I just see it too important.
I agree. I mean, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, is that okay with everyone? Do you mind calling the property owner and let them know?
Yeah. Sure will.
We'll continue, to communicate with y'all about what we find and, other options, so y'all can be thinking about it. I say it's not, you're almost in a catch-22 in a way.
Well, that's exactly right. We are at a catch-22.
Yes.
There's no, and then you put this other layer on top of it. It really puts us in a catch-22.
We just open ourselves up for such.
So, we want to be pro-business and business-friendly and facilitate business coming into our community, but then we
Yeah, 'cause
also have to be responsible for.
What we're going to hear is that this is my business, and
Yeah.
I'm stuck. You're telling me I can't open my business, and this is what we have been wrapped
Right.
around the axle with.
That's right.
Yes.
Okay. All right, any other questions before we move on to the next item, which is going to be just as intense a discussion? All right, let's move on to the Housing Authority Action Plan. I had sent to you all, you are very much aware of the activities that have been happening in the City of Tifton Housing Authority properties with regard to shootings, the horrific murder of a young girl. It's been very distressing, and it's been very frustrating, and it's been painful for this community. And I've shared with you, following the death of Allie Johnson, the 3-page email that I shared with the attorney of the Housing Authority with the concerns of the council. And it's no secret that we have had our Housing Authority Director and the Chairman of the Board appear before this council on 2 separate occasions, each about a year apart, one about a year ago, one about 2 years ago. Fortunately, we had not had those type of situations that had happened at that time, but with the same list of concerns: the conditions of the property, the lack of interaction with the residents, the concern about potential criminal activity, and we had a lot of issues with, with drug use, with drug busts, with, violence, with guns, you name it. And I wish Chief was still here to help us address some of these.
He's over there.
Oh, there he is. Okay.
He moved.
So Chief, I may call on you in a minute to help us with some of these. But I shared with the attorney my concerns following these latest activities. Within about a 7 to 10 day period, we had 2 shootings and a death, and that is unacceptable. The City of Tifton Housing Authority is the City of Tifton Housing Authority. These properties are, we're still trying to sort through who actually owns them. If you look on Q Public, it says the City of Tifton Housing Authority. However, I was told by their attorney that they're owned by HUD. So I'm not sure who owns them. There are also conditions on the property that, as it relates to fencing around the property, that has been destroyed or dismantled and taken apart. The Housing Authority is not sure who owns that fencing, although some of the fencing has recently been repaired. There doesn't seem to be, to me, the resources available for the residents of the Housing Authority properties to be able to engage in activities that they need to engage in, as far as things like parenting classes or childcare or job fairs, or how to prepare a resume and dress for an interview, just various life skills things that I think would be helpful. But my main concern is the condition of the properties. And I have been on site at the properties. I have also had the opportunity to be on the Housing Authority board meeting. They meet on I think it's third Thursday, or it's on a Thursday evening. Right now they're all meeting per Zoom because of the COVID issues, but I was on that call. And I shared with the attorney, who then shared with the chairman of the board and the executive director that 3-page report that I emailed to all of you. And I basically, in essence, put them on 60 days notice that these things needed to be cleaned up. Now, in exchange for that, there were things that the City of Tifton needed to do. We needed to come in and clean up, and Pete and ESG and the team is already working on cleaning up and going back to, and having code enforcement come in and address the private property owners that are on the periphery of the Housing Authority properties. So I had the opportunity to be on site Friday afternoon. Went to thank our fellows with ESG for all the work that they're doing, and they are doing a lot of cleanup. And I know Danny and Pete and I went through the neighborhood and looked at what could be done from a code enforcement standpoint to get some of these, what looked like abandoned and dilapidated properties addressed. So the community seemed to be very appreciative of the efforts when I was there Friday. There were a lot of people who were out and about working in their yards, cleaning up and that kind of thing, and so we were very visible. Also on Friday afternoon, I specifically went through and talked to many of the residents of Peterson Apartments, because that's where, unfortunately, the murder happened, this young girl. And I just wanted them to know that we were aware, that we were paying attention, that we had them in our thoughts and prayers, and just to hear from them. Most of the people that I talked to said, yeah, I've got conditions in my apartment that aren't appropriate. I've got problems with this, I have problems with that. This doesn't work, that's broken, I can't lock my door, I can't shut my window or open my window. It's just that same condition problem. So we have got to do something. And I want to do this with the support of the council. You know, I think we need to address this. And every resident of the Tifton Housing Authority properties, with the exception of the ones that are in the county or the one that's in Amiga, are residents of the city of Tifton, and they are our constituents. And whether they own their home or they rent through the housing authority and they're in public housing, they deserve safe, clean housing. They deserve safe and clean neighborhoods. And with all of the work that's being done with the urban redevelopment area, with the announcement that will be this week and the presentation of our community development block grant for the youth center across from Matt Wilson, with the prospective development that will go where the trailer park used to be, there's just there's a lot that needs to be done. And y'all have been very supportive and on board with the urban redevelopment projects and creating that authority. But now we need to go one step further. And I'm at a loss. I really don't know what to do. I don't know. We've addressed it. This will be the third time we've addressed it with the board. Last year, maybe the year before, I can't remember the exact date, I went to the board and we actually loaded up in a van and went to all the properties and saw represented, and there were a lot of hopes for improvement on these properties, and I haven't seen it yet. So I'm not saying that nothing's been done, but I haven't seen the results of the promises that we've been made by this board. I'm just kind of rambling, so anytime y'all want to jump in or
well, let me
say
ask you this.
okay.
So their response to the condition of their property was that, well, everybody else around us looks like crap, so we
No,
can,
that wasn't their response. There were a lot of reasons that HUD precludes them from being able to do certain things. They can't go do site visits, or they can't go knock on someone's door and do an inspection, those kinds of things. And my response was, you know, well, that doesn't...
They can go knocking on the door and say,
I don't
is there
believe-
any
I don't
problems that you
believe
have in your
that.
house, a window or whatnot? Because I would say that would be a fire hazard. I mean, that you can't get out of the window or something like that. I mean, Danny, you used to be the fire inspector. I mean...
Well, I'm telling you, there's problems.
Absolutely.
There are problems. And
Well, you
we
have
need-
my support.
Yeah, we need them
Let me just
addressed.
say
A
that.
couple of things, and I've told you this, Mayor, but, you know, I have a little experience with not this authority, but my mother lived in the Monroe Housing Authority in Louisiana, an apartment there. It was the same kind of thing. They had 8 or 10 of them. And the director there went every month for an inspection. And I'm pretty sure they were HUD. So this business about HUD won't allow you this and that. They checked windows. You couldn't put something in front of a window. You had to, I mean, they have all these guidelines. But what I'd like to know from Pete, and if he can go back to when they came a year ago and 2 years ago, because we specifically said something about Peterson.
Yes.
And we were assured.
Jessica pulled those minutes for me, so I'll share those.
Well, you know, had pictures and stuff. And if there's stuff not fixed today that we told them a year ago and 2 years ago that's still there, clean house. Maybe I shouldn't say it, but clean house. This is the third time. How many times do you keep doing it?
Well, what I'd like to do with y'all's blessing and permission and inclusion is take those 3 pages of concerns, and I've kind of cleaned them up a little bit, and to be very specific. When I emailed that, if you'll notice in that email that I sent, it said, I'm expecting these things to be accomplished within 60 days. They'll be hard to do, it's a challenge, but we can do it. And it's amazing, in the last 2 weeks, the number of people that I have talked to with various agencies in this community who have resources that can help, who have said, I will absolutely help. Why I was making that call was because I felt compelled to do so, because nobody else was making the call, and I was glad to do it. So there are people that are very willing to provide resources and look at doing things differently so that the residents of these properties have the resources that they need. Now, the other part of this is the possibility of creating, there's a couple of ideas that I've shared with y'all in email. One would be giving the board, the current board, 60 days to implement these changes, also appointing a kind of a side group or I don't know, like a resource authority or something to work with them to get them the resources that they need to implement these changes. And I've got a group that's willing to step up and step into that role now. The other thing would be to just set that aside and let the board do what they need to do. But I feel like we need to be very proactive in giving them every tool in the toolbox to be successful yet again. But I don't know what to do.
We appoint these folks, because of their resumes for a reason. All right. I think if you tell them about these people and that their eagerness to help, if they do not take advantage of them and they don't get what you're doing done in 60 days, I move that we make some serious changes to that board.
Well, what I'd like to do then is let me send a letter from all of us. I'd like for all of us to sign the letter to each of the board members with this. I want y'all to go back and look at that email that I sent to the attorney that she then forwarded to the chairman and to the director, and make sure you're comfortable with what that says. Like I said, I can kind of clean it up a little bit, and there, in looking at it, there were some things I could kind of combine and make it a little bit shorter. But look through that, and if y'all are comfortable with that, then what we can do, I'd like to send a letter officially putting this board on notice, because I've taken no official action at this point other than this is what I'd like to see done, and I'm going to give you 60 days to do it. But I think we need to do something official with that. So with your permission, what we'll do is we'll send a letter to each of the board members, and in that letter I can say these are the list of people in their affiliated business or organization that can provide assistance to accomplish these goals.
I agree.
Were you going to say something, Jackie?
Well, and maybe I'm just too tough, or I've been called other things. But I guess this is the third time.
I know.
And it took 2 shootings and a death.
Yeah.
And now we're going to send them a letter. Well, now we told you 2 years ago, and we told you a year ago, and now because of this, you have 60 days. Well, no. You had your chance. You didn't do it. And it took something like this, and now, well, we'll forget about that, but now you can go to, well, they didn't do it before. I don't know what makes them think now they're going to do it.
I don't know.
And it's just, it's very frustrating, and I think we need to take more serious action because of what happened and because of their lack of, was it their fault? I can't say it's their fault.
Right.
But stuff wasn't done that we knew needed to be done, and they still didn't do it.
Well, just simple things like lighting in the backs of at the back of the development, cameras at the back of the development, fencing around the development. I don't know if it would have changed anything, but it would have made the investigation of our police department a lot simpler. Bad things are going to happen all over town, unfortunately, but had they been able to have a video of someone coming out of that little girl's apartment, or if they tried to run through a broken fence and there was a fence there that prohibited them from just ducking under, a rolled back.
We shouldn't have to point out all of these things to these people.
Yeah.
Do we need to start going over there every week and point out to them? If we do, then guess what? We don't need them.
Well, I'm open for suggestions. I wanted us to discuss it. I wanted us to discuss it publicly because for several reasons. This community is hurt over what happened. And that little girl's death, there's got to be some good that will come out of what this family is going through.
Amen.
And I tell you, it's rocked me to my core. It has rocked so many people to their core. That could have been any of our daughter, any of ours. And when the GBI and Chief Hyman, the Tifton Police Department, had the press conference the other day, I couldn't go. I was under the weather. I wanted to be there, but I couldn't go. But I did watch it. And when that GBI agent said, she became everyone's daughter, he was right. She became everyone's daughter. And on Saturday morning, I was not able to go to the funeral on Saturday, but on Saturday morning I went to the visitation. And I'm telling you, there is not another child, and there was another death that did, for whatever reason, I'm not sure why, it wasn't as public as Allie's death. There was another child that was shot. We've had 2 children die in our community, and those children do not need to have died in vain, and for us to not do something. So I agree with what you're saying. I was trying to be sort of politically balanced in my, let's give them one more chance, but I'm open for suggestion to whatever this council feels is the right action to do.
I would suggest, Mayor, that you probably discuss with Rob. I don't want to put anything in this letter that would prevent us from then if we wanted to go stronger and do something.
Right.
So don't, sometimes you put in there, well, you got 60 days. Well, okay, if they do all that, then well, now our hands are kind of tied. But we need to look to see.
Yeah, talk to Rob.
Can we do
Rob's
something, if we decide to say we need to take stronger action, let's be sure we don't prevent us from being able to do that by sending a letter that.
Well, I want this town to hear, I want every resident of this town to hear, young, old, black, white, it's not an issue of race, it's not an issue of poverty or wealth, it's you are a resident of this community and you deserve better.
Exactly. But look where they're living, so it is an issue of poverty and lower income because they're having to live. It shouldn't be, but they're having to live there. They've put up with it.
Yeah.
We've known about it for several years, and that's my only point of why I get frustrated with it because this ain't new.
Yeah.
We've been knowing it, and shame on us for not forcing the issue, and shame on that board and that director for not taking care of business.
Right. All right. Well, let's do this, and not.
You put as much pressure as you feel necessary is what I'm going to say.
Well, I've got Rob checking on some things for me, and we don't have an answer to some of the questions that I've asked him about. So what we'll do, check your emails. We will email out, and I'll call each of you individually. It sounds to me then like the action tonight is we need to take action. We just need guidance from our attorney on what action we can take. So is that a fair statement? Is everybody in agreement with that? And I know I meant to mention at the beginning of the meeting, Councilman Terrell could not be here tonight. His wife Diane had some surgery, so keep her in your thoughts and prayers. And if you have an opportunity, just maybe text Johnny, see if they need anything, and I'll do the same. But I've had the opportunity to visit. Of course, this is his district. So many of these properties are in his. MJ, you have 2 properties, I think, in your district. Johnny has the bulk of them, but he and I have talked quite extensively, and I know Pete's been very involved. Everybody's been very involved. The police, the code enforcement, ESG from a cleanup standpoint. There are things that we need to do too that we can do better as the city. And I've made the commitment that we will, and that's already been implemented. So
if you also keep in mind, there's one other property that's not under the housing authority, but it is low-income housing, and the site manager will not come out of the office because she is terrified.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're dealing with. So it's not just a housing authority.
It's, and that's not our town. And that's not going to become our town. So, like I said, I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. Every resident of this community deserves safe, clean, stable housing, and whether it's your home that you own and you bought and you live there as an owner occupant, or you're renting because of your circumstances in public housing, it's nothing to be embarrassed about. It's nothing to be ashamed of, but you also deserve clean, safe housing, especially these kids. So we're going to do everything possible. So okay, we'll talk further. So I think we'll wait to hear from Rob. So Rob, you know what to do. Okay. Okay, thank you. All right, let's move on. Our board report. We've got a couple of spots open on boards, and we have applications in. So we could go ahead with both the Tifton Tree Board and Keep Tift Beautiful. They both have board members whose terms have expired that they would like to have them reappointed, and the board members have said they would like to be reappointed. If my computer will wake up here, I'll tell you who they are. I know it's Tifton Tree Board and Keep Tift Beautiful. Let's see here. All right, for Tifton Tree Board, Jimmy Felton is seeking reappointment and George Validas is seeking reappointment, and the Tree Board has recommended reappointing those applicants.
Both of them, yes.
Because they're both very,
Yes.
very good members of that board.
They are.
Do y'all want to go
I
ahead?
move we
and
reappoint those.
So
two.
moved.
Okay, so we have a motion, a second. Any
Second.
further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and then on the Keep Tift Beautiful, we have 2 new applicants. We have 1 vacancy. Alina Bennett is a new applicant and Victoria Heath is a new applicant, and Keep Tift Beautiful did recommend both applicants for reappointment. We just have 1 spot, Jessica, to fill? Okay. So their applications are there in our packet. If there is,
Whose applications first?
Alina Bennett's came in on 7/21 and Victoria Heath on 8/24. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Which
Because
submitted one
they're
first?
both, both of them are apparently qualified and both of them were succeeded, I think, the first come, first served.
Okay, so then you want to make a motion to appoint Alina Bennett?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a motion to appoint Alina Bennett to Keep Tift Beautiful. Is there a second?
I'll second it because she applied first, is that what, okay.
Yeah, just because the timing
That's a
of her
good, it's a good
application.
reason, but I want to be clear. you know,
Yes, that's the reason why I'm.
It's not a case of, okay, well, you.
That's right.
And we will keep Victoria's application on file, so as another seat opens up, we can
Yes.
potentially appoint her
I'm
later.
good with
So-
it. I second.
Okay. All right, so we have motion second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. Pete, City Manager report.
Mayor, thank you. I don't have anything for tonight.
All right, Mayor and Council comments. Let's see, where do we want to start? MJ?
I'm just happy to be here. We still got a lot of work to do, I guess.
Yep.
We're gonna get through, we're gonna get some definitions defined, and we're gonna get the housing authority corrected, and we're just gonna continue to work together.
There you go.
So,
Excellent. Jack?
I think I've said all I need to say.
Okay. Wesley?
I'm gonna shed a little bit of good news. We have obviously our favorite time of the year, which is college football season. This weekend, our local hometown hero, Rashad Bateman, will be playing against Michigan. They're both ranked in the top 25, so that's good. But I want to point out what Rashad's doing this year, and he's such a leader, and it's really an inspiration that he is doing this. He used to wear number 13, and if you look at a 1 and a 3, it's in the shape of a B. And that's always been pretty cool, I've always thought. But this year, he's going to change his number from 13 to 0 because there's 0 tolerance for racism.
Okay.
And that is what he is representing through his entire, I guess it's his junior year. He's highly respected amongst the NFL analysts as far as being possibility one of the top 5 wide receiver draft picks. So we could have our first round draft pick from Tift County.
Nice.
But I just thought that was, wow. You got someone that's got that stage, and he's saying, hey, let's step it up. And I agree 150% with him. And it's time to zero out racism. And just wanted to make that statement. And kudos to him, and good luck to him throughout his
There you
season.
go. Awesome. That is good news. That's very good. All right, I'll wrap things up. I've got 2 comments. One, I want to welcome Billy Malone. Billy is the new Tifton Gazette reporter, so looks nothing like our Eve, but we're glad to have you. Very glad to have you. And as you know, Eve now is working with the Chamber of Commerce, so a great job for her, a great fit for her. And Billy, we welcome you and look forward to working with you. So,
Thank you so
all
much. I look
right,
forward to
thank
working with
you.
you.
Excellent, thank you. And Rob, service delivery. Ooh,
Oh, good God.
there we go. How are we on everything? Is everything good?
Yeah, we've actually noticed a draft of the resolution that has been submitted to Mr. Rao.
Okay,
I think that was done on probably Friday.
okay.
So we're just waiting to hear back from Tony. It looks good to me, so hopefully we'll get
Okay.
that signed off. And
Okay, does he have a deadline to respond, or?
no,
Did we hear something?
actually, I just got an email from Andy Welch, wanted to know if I had heard anything. I have not.
Okay,
Let him know that. I'll follow up
Okay.
and see if we can go ahead and get that done.
perfect, okay. That's, we like to put that one to bed, so that's good. All right, is there anything else to come before the council this evening? Are you sure? Y'all want to stay here for another 30 minutes just for the fun of it? Okay, well then I call us adjourned.